I didn't expect him to give up his world for me, but he did. And this is how I learned what love really means. This is my story. Let's begin. I'd been sent to the Santoro estate for diplomatic purposes. That's how my father phrased it. Like I was an envelope with a wax seal. Precious, silent, and only useful when opened at the right moment. I didn't argue. Arguing never mattered much in our world, not when your last name was Moretti and your face was the one they used to soften a threat. But I packed slowly that morning. Not because I was nervous. Because I didn't want to forget that I had chosen to go. That part was important. They could move me like a piece, but they couldn't move what was mine. And the only thing I truly owned anymore was the why. The car that picked me up was black and silent. The man driving it never looked back, and I spent 2 hours tracing the same line across the fogged window with the side of my finger. Not because I was restless, because I wanted to feel the glass move with me. The Santoro estate sat like a crown on a cliff. Elegant, cold, unbothered. The house itself was old, white stone and long balconies, with windows that never seemed to reflect the sun. But the gates were new. Black iron. Clean. I didn't expect anyone to greet me. So when the front door opened and he was the one standing there, I didn't know what to say. Rafael Santoro. The heir. The one no one ever described clearly. Quiet, some said. Dangerous, others whispered. Disappointed, his father called him once. I called him nothing, because I didn't know what he was. Yet. He didn't speak at first, just stepped aside, holding the door open like I was a guest at a hotel, instead of a woman sent as collateral. I passed him without nodding, and I felt his gaze at my back, sharp, focused, but not undressing me, reading me. The entryway was marble, high-ceilinged, too bright. A woman in black heels and a stiff blazer gave me a folder of estate rules like I was a college freshman. No guests without clearance. No rooms outside the second-floor west wing. No political statements in public. No press without pre-approval. Raphael stood beside her, silent, like he didn't belong to this place, even though his name was carved into every stone. When the woman left, I finally looked at him. And he looked back. That was the first time I realized how still he was. Like movement cost him something. Like silence was his native language. I'm not here for long, I said. His voice was low, almost dry. Let's hope not, I blinked, and he added, not because I mind, because this house doesn't deserve you. I didn't know how to answer that, so I walked away, and for the first time in my life, I wanted to look back. The room they gave me was too large. There was a fireplace, a balcony, a carved bed that looked like it had been brought over from another century, but no warmth, no color, nothing of me. I unpacked only one thing, a leather notebook, blank inside. No sketches yet. I hadn't drawn in weeks. Not since Isabella's last warning. Be careful, Valentina, she'd said. You play soft too often. I wasn't playing. I was surviving. And I'd learned that silence gets you more than speeches in our world. Because if you don't speak, they fill in the blanks. And I let them. Dinner that night was a display. 6 men. 2 women. All of them older. All of them looking at me like I was a chessboard with legs. Raphael sat at the end of the table. He didn't speak unless addressed. Didn't cut his food until the last person sat. Didn't look at me once. I didn't know whether to be relieved or disappointed. But I watched him. Watched the way his jaw tensed when someone mentioned his father. The way he didn't toast with the wine. The way his eyes narrowed when someone mispronounced my name. He said nothing. But he saw everything. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. Too much quiet. Too much pretending. So I left my room, barefoot, in one of my silk robes, walking slowly toward the end of the long West Wing hallway. I didn't expect to find anything. But then I heard it. A piano. It wasn't music. Not really. Just soft chords. half finished, like someone was thinking through sound. I followed it, down the hall, around a corner, to a small room tucked behind an old study. And there he was, Raphael, in a gray t-shirt and dark pants, no shoes, seated at the piano with his head bowed. I froze. But he didn't. He just kept playing. Quiet, slow keys. Until I stepped into the room. Then he stopped, didn't look over, just said, "I thought you'd find this place." I blinked. "How? Because you don't belong in that room upstairs." My heart thudded. "And you do?" He finally looked at me, and something in his face softened. Barely. "No," he said. "I belong exactly here, out of sight, half heard." I sat down on the bench beside him. Too close. Not close enough. He didn't move, neither did I. "I didn't know you played," I said. "I don't." "But you're playing." He looked down at his hands. "They only taught me things that cost something." I nodded. "I know the feeling." The silence between us filled the room like steam. Heavy, warm. I wasn't afraid of it. And when he started to play again, I didn't interrupt, because it wasn't music, it was confession. And it was the first honest sound I'd heard in years. When I finally stood to leave, I felt him watching me again. Not with desire. With attention. Like I was the only thing in the room he wanted to remember clearly. I turned back at the door. "You don't speak much, do you?" "No." "Why?" His answer was quiet, because I've never had to talk to be used. I didn't sleep that night either. But this time it wasn't the quiet that kept me up. It was the sound of him. Low notes played with care, and the way his presence felt less like power and more like promise. The morning after the piano, Raphael didn't mention it. At breakfast he nodded politely, took his coffee black, listened while 3 older men discussed a port closure like the world was on fire. He didn't look at me once, but I knew he'd heard my footsteps leave. I knew he'd heard the way I paused at the door. And I knew something had shifted in him. Because later that day, the staff made a quiet change. I wasn't seated at the far end of the dining room anymore. I was placed at Raphael's right. The peace delegation was scheduled to last 4 days. In theory. It was a press event disguised as a family truce. The Santoros hosted, the Morettis observed, and I existed. Beautiful, silent, polished. I was the soft edge to a sharp deal. What they didn't count on, what I didn't either, was that Raphael didn't like being watched. But he watched me. By the second day, I noticed the patterns. He walked 1 pace behind me at official functions. He nodded when I deflected questions from reporters. And every time someone tried to loop me into a conversation about marriage alliances, his jaw clenched. Slightly. Just once. But I saw it. "You've been in the papers before," I said to him that night, sitting on the balcony of the West Wing. "But not for talking. I've never had much use for public words." "And private ones?" His gaze didn't shift from the view. "They cost more. We were supposed to attend a gala that evening, more theater. But there'd been a threat on one of the family cars the night before. So the event was postponed, and we were stuck, inside the estate, all day, under tightened security. That's what the guards called it. I called it forced proximity. I didn't hate it. Raphael wasn't like the men I'd grown up around. He didn't interrupt. He didn't smile to sell something. He didn't ask if I was okay. He just was. 1 step behind. 1 glance across the room. 1 word when necessary. "Valentina." He said it like it belonged to him. Not possessively, not presumptively. Just, truthfully, it was late. I'd gone to the courtyard to escape the marble and the cold. I didn't know he'd followed me. I turned when I heard him say my name. And for a moment, I forgot how to breathe. "You shouldn't be out here," he said quietly. "I needed air. There are cameras." I looked up at the sky. They already see what they want. I don't. That made me pause. Then what do you see? He stepped closer. Someone who keeps pretending this doesn't matter. I let that settle. Because it wasn't flirtation. It was recognition. And it hit harder than any compliment. You don't call me Miss Moretti, I said after a long silence. No. Why? He didn't answer right away. Then he said, because you're not here to be passed around. You're here because they don't know what else to do with a woman who refuses to bow. I exhaled, and without thinking, I stepped closer. Why do you care? His voice was quiet. Still. Because I know what it feels like to be given power you never asked for. We didn't touch. Not then, but I felt it. That pull. Like the gravity between us had shifted. Just slightly. Not enough to pull us together, but enough to make standing apart hurt. That night, a staffer brought me the revised schedule. On it, a press breakfast had been added. Required attendance. Dress formal. No family commentary. I rolled my eyes. Tossed it on the dresser. But when I arrived the next morning, Raphael was already there. And this time, when the press turned to me with their thin smiles and loaded questions, he spoke first. She's not available for comment. That was the moment. Not the piano. Not the wrist brush. Not even the balcony. That. Because he didn't ask. He shielded. And it wasn't loud or performative. It was just real. That afternoon, I stood outside the estate library, staring at the doors. I didn't know why, until they opened, and Raphael stepped out. He paused, tilted his head, then pushed the door wide open and said, "You'll like this room." I walked in, and he followed. The library was warmer than the rest of the house, books stacked to the ceiling, a fire already lit, and only 2 chairs. I sat in one. He stood. "Do you always pace like that?" I asked. He glanced down at his hands. "Only when I want to speak and don't know how." "Try." His jaw tensed, then relaxed. "I didn't expect you to be like this." "Like what?" "Unapologetically yourself?" That hit me, harder than I wanted. Because I'd spent most of my life being shaped, softened, perfected, presented. And here was a man telling me, not in admiration, not in awe, but in truth, that he saw me and didn't want me to change. I stood, crossed the room, and stood in front of him. Say it again. He didn't ask what I meant. He just did. Valentina. My name again, soft, certain. And for the first time in my life, I didn't want to belong to my family, or their legacy, or their cause. I wanted to belong here. Just for a little while. Just to him. I smiled on cue. I waved at the cameras, shook hands with men who spoke to my father more than to me. I let one of the older Santoro cousins put his hand too low on my back, and I laughed, like I didn't feel like I was suffocating in silk. The press breakfast had been rescheduled, not that I asked why, but this time they wanted a candid moment between families, so they staged it. Raphael and I were seated beside one another at a garden table. Glass teapots, fruit in curated pyramids. Laughter that didn't sound like real air. One reporter leaned forward, voice syrupy and fake. "Miss Moretti, do you believe a woman has the same power as a man in your world?" I paused, and before I could answer, Raphael shifted beside me, just slightly, but I felt it. His leg pressed against mine under the table. Solid, grounding, not demanding. A tether. So I smiled, and said something clever. Vague, empty, like I always did, but something cracked in me, and I felt it more than I heard it. I made it through the event, through the garden photos, through the polite goodbyes and the fake waves, and then I ran. Not dramatically, just far enough, up the stairs, through the hall, into a room I hadn't been assigned but found anyway. A library annex, Quiet, windowed, empty. And then I sat down. Floor, knees pulled in, heels still on, and I cried. I don't know how long I was there, but I didn't hear him come in. I only knew Raphael had found me when I felt his shadow fall across my legs. I didn't lift my head, but I knew it was him. Not because of the silence, because of the stillness. "Go away," I whispered. He didn't. He sat down beside me, not close enough to touch, but close enough that I felt warmer. I wiped my eyes with the edge of my sleeve. "Did they send you?" "No." "So why are you here?" His voice was quiet. "Because I watched you lie for 40 minutes and no one noticed." That made me inhale too sharply. "You think I'm weak." "No," he said. "I think you're tired." That unraveled me more than anything. Because he didn't try to fix it, didn't offer empty reassurances, didn't touch me without permission. He just sat. And slowly, breath by breath, I started to feel like my skin fit again. "I used to want to lead the family," I said, suddenly. "I thought I could." "You still could," I shook my head. "They wouldn't let me." "That's not the same thing." I turned toward him. He was watching the window, jaw steady, hands clasped loosely in front of him. "I was 15, I said, voice cracking, "when my father told me I was too soft, too emotional." Raphael didn't flinch. He just said he was afraid of you. That silenced me. And for the first time in years, I felt the truth of it settle. Not like fire, like water. "I'm not like my sisters," I whispered. "I know. I let them think I don't care." "I know that too," I stared at him. "Then why are you here?" He finally looked at me and said the thing no one else ever had. "Because I want to be." I closed my eyes. Just for a second, and when I opened them again, I said the first honest thing in hours. "I'm not okay." His response was soft, immediate. "You don't have to be." I leaned my head back against the wall. Let silence take the space between us again. And when I finally shifted, just slightly toward him, his knee brushed mine. Barely, but it was enough. Enough to say, "I see you. And I'm not moving." When I finally stood, he didn't ask if I was better. He just stood too, and walked with me back down the hall. Not in front, not behind, beside me. Later that night, I found a folded piece of paper under my door. It wasn't signed. But I knew it was him. It said, "You don't have to smile if it hurts. They'll still fear you. But I won't." I sat on my bed for a long time after that. Notebook open, pen in hand. And for the first time in weeks, I drew. Not something beautiful. Something real. My own hand, open, slightly trembling, but reaching forward. Like I was learning how to receive something again. Like I was done pretending I didn't want to be held. I need to pause here, because this is where I stopped pretending he was just my escort. This is where I realized his presence was protection. Not loud, not possessive, not performative. Just quiet. Constant. Close. I didn't fall for him because he wanted me. I fell because he never looked away, even when I came apart in front of him. He didn't try to fix me. He just stayed. Let me tell you what he did next. Back to my story. The storm rolled in fast. Not the kind that gave warning. Slow clouds, heavy skies. This one snapped. Lightning against a too clear dusk. Rain like an argument I wasn't ready for. The estate lost power just after dinner. The backup generators kicked on, but only in the lower floors, which meant the west wing, my wing, went quiet. No lights, no hallway hum, no phone signal, and no one came to check on me. Except him. There was a knock, soft, low. I was sitting on the edge of the bed, bare feet curled under the silk hem of my robe. I didn't answer. He came in anyway. Raphael, carrying a small lantern and a folded blanket. "I figured you'd pretend you weren't cold," he said. I didn't smile. But I didn't look away either. He set the blanket down on the settee near the fireplace, then crossed to the hearth and crouched, stacking logs like he'd done it 1,000 times. I watched the muscles in his forearms flex under the sleeves of his shirt, watched the fire flicker to life in front of him, watched him sit back on his heels and exhale like he'd been holding breath since morning. "I'm fine," I said quietly. "I know, but you still came." His eyes found mine. "I don't come when people ask." I tilted my head. "So why now?" He didn't blink. "Because I knew you wouldn't." The storm cracked again. Closer this time. I jumped. Barely. But he noticed. Raphael moved to sit on the floor, his back to the bed frame, posture loose but alert, like he was used to being near danger. But not shaped by it. I didn't mean to move closer. But I did. Barely an inch at a time. Until I was sitting on the floor too, my knees drawn up, blanket tucked around me. "Were you born for this?" I asked. He glanced sideways. "For what? The title, the power, all of it." "No." "Then why take it?" "I didn't," he said. "Not yet." He turned toward me, really turned, and in a voice lower than the storm, he said, "I'm not going to." That silenced me, but it didn't shock me. Some part of me had already known. Felt it in the way he didn't push his name like a weapon, in the way he watched first, spoke second, in the way he sat on the floor of a dark room instead of in a throne. "I should be angry," I said. He didn't ask why. "Because you're the only reason I don't feel completely alone here." His answer was immediate. "You're not." I looked down. My hands were trembling. From cold, from nerves, from whatever this was. He noticed. And he reached for them, not fast, not possessive, just steady. He took my right hand in both of his and held it, warming it with his palms. That's all. But it felt like the first time I'd ever been touched without being assessed. I couldn't breathe, and I didn't want to move, because his thumb stroked once over the back of my wrist, barely there, and my whole body forgot what fear was. I looked up at him, and he was already watching me. His voice was soft. "Tell me to stop." "I won't." "Tell me you don't want this." I shook my head, then whispered, "I do." He leaned in, slowly, like he'd wait forever for me to meet him halfway. And when I did, when my mouth touched his, I realized I wasn't hungry for passion. I was starving for presence. The kiss was slow, unhurried. His hand cupped the side of my face like I was breakable, but not weak. My hands found his shoulders, not to pull him closer, to feel something real. He deepened the kiss, just slightly, then stopped, forehead resting against mine, breath warm against my skin. "You're not something to be used," he whispered. "Not by them. Not by me." I exhaled and leaned forward until my forehead pressed to his chest. "I'm scared," I said. "I know, but I still want this. I know that too." He didn't rush, didn't ask for anything more, just wrapped the blanket around us both, and held me there, between firelight and thunder, not as proof, not as possession, but as peace. We didn't sleep, but we didn't speak again either, not until dawn began to cut through the windows. Then, softly, he whispered, "You don't have to go back to pretending." And for the first time in my life, I believed it. It wasn't the kiss that caused the backlash. It was the silence after. The fact that I didn't run, didn't vanish behind locked doors, didn't put space between us. The fact that I stayed. That's what got their attention. By morning, the staff moved differently. Less eye contact, more questions asked with polite detachment. Someone had told someone. And by lunch, it reached my father. I knew because he called, not to speak to me, but to speak to Raphael. In front of me, The call came in as we sat at the long table in the estate conference room. I'd just poured tea. Raphael's phone vibrated. He looked at it, then handed it to me. "He wants you," he said, voice quiet. I answered, "Valentina." My father's voice was sharp, not angry, cold. "You're not here to entertain yourself." "I know. You're not here to be noticed." I didn't ask for the attention. He paused, then said the thing he meant to say all along. "You're not to be seen with him again. Do you understand me?" I didn't answer. I handed the phone back to Raphael. He didn't take it, just looked at me, brow furrowed, calm but alert, the kind of calm that comes before something irreversible. Later that day, Raphael disappeared. Not far. Just far enough. I didn't see him at dinner. Not in the halls, not in the music room. It felt colder. I wasn't surprised when his cousin approached me at dusk. Luca Santoro. Slick smile, polished suit, soft threat. "I'm told you and Raphael have grown close." I tilted my head. "We've spoken." He smiled wider. "That's not what I heard." "Then perhaps you need better sources." His gaze sharpened. "I don't think you understand what's at stake." "Oh, I do," I said. "You think I'm a problem." "No, you're a test." I walked away, but not before I saw the flash of irritation behind his eyes. I wasn't playing the role, and that made me dangerous. The next morning, I overheard it. An agreement. Not formal, not announced, but discussed in enough detail to make my stomach knot. There was going to be an arrangement, not for me, to me. They were offering me as a show of trust, to a man I hadn't met, in a country I didn't live in, for an alliance I didn't believe in. It was a deal, and I was the proof of it. I didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't run. I found Raphael. He was in the study, alone, staring at a map on the wall like it had done something to him. "I heard," I said. He turned, just slightly. "I know. They want to use me." His jaw tensed. "They always did. And you're letting them." That made him turn fully. "No," he said. Quiet, firm. "I told my father last night," he continued, "that if they tried to force your hand, I'd remove mine from theirs." I blinked. "You what?" "I'm stepping down." The words didn't register at first. "I'm not going to take the throne," he said. "Not if it means watching them sell you off like something borrowed." I sat down. Hard, because it was too much. Too much gravity. Too much truth. "You said you weren't going to anyway." "I wasn't," he said. But this made it permanent. I should have told him no. Should have told him it wasn't worth it. But I didn't, because I wanted someone to choose me. Fully, openly, at cost. And now he had. "Raphael." "I know what this means," he said. "They'll come after you. They already are. You'll lose everything." He stepped closer. "No," he said. "I'll lose them, not everything." And then, so quietly I barely heard it, he said, "I'd rather lose a throne than lose you." That night, I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, but I also couldn't run. Because for the first time in my life, the future was being rewritten for me. Not by me, not against me, but for me. And Raphael wasn't offering it like a prize. He was standing inside it, with me. The cost was real. I felt it in every glance, every silence at dinner, every door that didn't open when I passed. But I also felt something else. Freedom. Not loud, not dramatic, just present. The kind that comes from knowing someone has already paid the price and refuses to ask you for change. They moved me before sunrise. No explanation, no warning, just a knock on my door and 2 guards in black suits who said, "This is for your safety." I didn't ask questions. I'd grown up with that tone, the kind of calm that meant, this isn't a request. The room they placed me in was smaller. High windows, no balcony, one door, 2 cameras, no phone, no staff, just silence, and the certainty that Raphael didn't know, because if he had, I wouldn't be here alone. I waited, all day, traced patterns in the dust on the sill, counted footsteps in the hall, listened for his voice, and didn't hear it. And still, I waited. Because I knew him now, and Raphael Santoro didn't let people vanish. It was past midnight when I heard it, the lock clicking, the door opening. And then, his voice. Soft. Controlled. Dangerous. Don't touch her again. I stood. And he stepped into the room like he belonged there, not with dominance, with purpose. He shut the door behind him, crossed the floor, and wrapped his arms around me without asking. I fell into him like I'd been waiting all day, because I had. He didn't speak. He just held me. And that was the moment I broke. Again. Only this time, it wasn't fear that opened me, it was relief. They said it was for my safety. I whispered into his chest. His hand was at the back of my head, steady. They didn't ask me. I thought you'd left. I never left. He pulled back just enough to look at me. I made a choice, he said. I know. No, really. His voice was rough now. I signed it. The paper. I gave it up. Raphael. He touched my cheek. They threatened you. I signed their deal. I told them I would walk away from the crown, the seat, the name, everything. And they still locked me up. He didn't answer, because we both knew what it meant. You shouldn't be here, I said softly. I didn't come to be safe. Then why? His answer was the most dangerous thing he'd ever said to me. Because you didn't ask for this. And I'm not leaving you in it. I couldn't breathe. Not because I was afraid. Because I wasn't. For the first time, I wasn't afraid. Not of them. Not of the cost. Not of what I felt. I reached for him. And this time, he didn't hesitate. His mouth found mine. Urgent, but still gentle. Hands at my back, anchoring me, not claiming me. He kissed me like I was a promise he'd already kept, like he wasn't asking, he was offering. I let him, every second of it. Because the storm in my body didn't scare me anymore. He had weathered worse. And I trusted him to carry me through this too. When he lifted me, it wasn't rushed. It was reverent, like he needed me closer. Not to possess, to reassure. He sat me on the edge of the bed, hands in my hair, breath warm on my cheek. And when I reached for him, really reached, he stilled. Not out of hesitation, out of awe. I've got you, he said. It wasn't a whisper. It was a vow. What followed wasn't hurried. It wasn't explosive. It was safe. He kissed me like he needed me to feel every second of it, tucked my hair behind my ear like it mattered, touched the edge of my jaw with the back of his fingers like I was fragile, but not breakable. And when he leaned in again, slow, steady, I kissed him first. Because I was ready now. And he never took what I didn't offer. We didn't speak for a long time. But he stayed, pulled the blanket around us like a shelter, held my hand against his chest, under his shirt, so I could feel how steady he was. Tell me this is real, I whispered. He kissed the back of my knuckles. This is the only thing that is. And I believed him. Because I could feel it now. This wasn't power. It wasn't rebellion. It wasn't resistance. It was love. The kind that chose you. Even when you couldn't choose yourself yet. This is the moment I should have walked away. I didn't. And I need you to hear what happened next. Because that night wasn't about passion. It was about proof. Proof that he meant it when he gave up everything. Proof that I wasn't just a move in their game. He held me like he knew the storm was coming. And he chose to be my shelter anyway. That's the kind of love they fear. And they should. Let's end this. Back to my story. The announcement went out just after dawn. It was supposed to be about the transition of power, a graceful handoff, a diplomatic statement. Instead, it became a battlefield. Raphael had submitted his withdrawal from the family council. Formally, irrevocably, and the press caught wind of it before the family could shape the narrative. They were already circling the estate by the time I opened the curtains. Headlines in bold font. Santoro heir steps down, motives unclear. Whispers of a Moretti involvement. My stomach twisted. But not from fear. From certainty. Because I knew what was coming. And I knew he'd walk through it. They called a press event. Mandatory. Mid-morning. The kind where families are lined up like royalty. All smiles. All strategy. But I didn't know they'd ask me to stand behind Raphael. Not until a staffer came to dress me. Not until I saw the placement card on the stage. V. Moretti. I looked at him when we were backstage, waiting for the cameras. You don't have to do this, I said. I already did. Raphael. He stepped closer. You think I'd let them explain me without saying your name? I didn't speak. But he saw everything I couldn't say. And gently, he reached for my wrist. Let his fingers settle around it. Soft. Steady. The same way he had the night he found me. You're not alone up there, he said. Even if they glare? They already are. The moment they called him forward, I felt the air shift. The cameras buzzed, the whispers surged, the faces around us sharpened. And still, he reached for my hand. Right there. In front of the world. And I let him. Because I was done pretending he wasn't mine. He stepped up to the mic. Didn't smile. Didn't greet. Just stood tall. And said, there are moments in life when you must decide what power is worth. Silence. Then, I've been offered titles, legacies, thrones, but I will not sit in a seat that demands I become someone I'm not. Another pause, and then he turned slightly, just enough to glance at me. I will not lead a family that trades women for strategy. A murmur ran through the crowd. But he didn't stop. I love Valentina Moretti. And if that means I lose my name, my position, my inheritance, so be it. My breath caught. Not from shock, from recognition, because he didn't say it to make a scene. He said it to make a stand. I saw my father's face from across the stage. Stone. I saw Luca Santoro take a step forward. A flicker of rage. But Raphael didn't flinch, and neither did I. After the statement, the stage emptied fast. The cameras wanted a quote. A moment. But Raphael reached for my hand again and didn't let go. He walked me through the back corridor, past the marble halls, into the garden where no one could follow. And only then did he stop. I meant it, he said. I know. You're not something to be hidden. Not anymore. I stepped forward, until his hand was at my back again. And my forehead was pressed to his collarbone. You just declared war, I whispered. No, I declared. Peace. My voice cracked. They won't see it that way. He kissed the top of my head. They don't have to. I didn't say it for them. The wind moved through the garden like a breath I didn't know I needed. Soft, steady, full of space. And in that moment, I realized I could exist like this. Known. Not for them. For me. Later that evening, he came to my room. Not to hide. Not to whisper. But to stay. He didn't ask for permission. Because he already had it. Not from duty. From everything we'd chosen when the world tried to tear us apart. When he lay beside me, fully clothed, arm around my waist, breath in my hair. I knew this was real, and I wasn't dreaming. Because dreams didn't feel this warm, or this safe. I don't need the throne, he whispered against my temple. You gave it up for me. No, he said. I gave it up for the man I want to be. And I believed him. Because I had seen his truth. And now the world had too. We didn't leave right away, Raphael offered. He said we could walk out that night, go somewhere quiet, somewhere safe. But I told him no. Because I wanted to stay until I could walk the halls without whispering. Until I could breathe in the place that tried to silence me, and not flinch. The world didn't fall apart after the press conference. It didn't explode. It unfolded. Softly, slowly, as if peeling back a lie that had lived too long in its skin. And in that space we existed. Not quietly, but not loudly either. Just honestly. Raphael didn't try to be someone else. He didn't fill the void with promises. He cooked me breakfast. Badly. He read beside me at night. He didn't talk about power or thrones or what we've lost. Because what we had was enough. The only time he looked back was to tell his father, I won't come back unless I can walk in as myself. He started a small security firm in Palermo, just enough to pay for what we needed. To protect who needed protecting, not for legacy, for purpose. I stayed with him through the fall, through the shifting headlines, through the days where my name felt heavier than usual. But I stayed, not out of rebellion, out of peace. Because this was mine. One night, he came in late, rain on his jacket, a bruise just below his jaw. I touched it without thinking. He leaned into my hand like it was the softest place he'd ever been. Still want this? He asked. I didn't answer. I kissed him instead. The next morning, I made coffee before he could. I handed him the mug. He looked at it like it was the clearest yes I'd ever spoken. And maybe it was. We were out walking when it happened. 2 older men in dark coats passed us on the street. They recognized him. Recognized me. One stopped. You could have ruled everything, he said to Raphael. He didn't blink. I already do. That night, as we lay in bed, bare feet tangled, my hand on his chest, I told him the truth. I thought love had to be loud to matter. He kissed my forehead. It just has to be chosen. That's the thing no one tells you. That safety doesn't always arrive with sirens or grand gestures. Sometimes it's in the silence. In the way his hand never leaves yours in a crowd. In the way he says your name when no one's listening. In the way he gave up a kingdom and never once asked for thanks. So no, he didn't save me, he chose me. And that changed everything. Thank you for listening to my story, The Sister He Chose Over His Throne. This wasn't just a love story. It was a story about surrender, of power, of pride, of fear. Because when someone chooses you over everything they were born to carry, you learn to breathe again. If this one stayed with you, I'd love to hear from you. Tell me where you listened from, or just leave a quiet word below. You've made it to the end of Book 7, the last installment in the series 7 Sisters Claimed. You've seen how 7 sister, even blood, could be so different, but yet understand each other and respect each other and the men who loved them. Thank you again for spending your time with me. Don't forget to share this series with someone who might enjoy it or need to hear a message from it. Like, comment, and subscribe. And see you in the next series.